In this video, I'm going to show you how to change the foreground of your aquarium without removing any of your fish or resetting your tank. This can completely change the look of your aquascape, giving you and your fish a beautiful new environment to enjoy. Plants in the foreground of my aquarium mainly consisted of Calanthium tenellum and Crypt parva, which had grown extremely thick over time. I enjoyed the jungle style look, but since it wasn't maintained properly, it became too thick, and before you know it, other plants started getting outcompeted for nutrients and light. This single grassy plant is also quite monotonous when planted by itself, so if I could do this again, I would have added a variety of plants to the foreground to increase the contrast and interest of the scape. There are also some Italian Vallisneria that need to be replanted in the back, as well as some Crypt Wendii brown. I've always really liked the look of river tanks that offer a sand foreground filled with smooth rocks of different colors and textures, so that's the style I chose to take. This would give my corridors a place to swim around more comfortably, giving me a chance to see them more than I currently do. A sand foreground can also improve the overall flow of your tank. It can eliminate places where waste organics have a chance to accumulate, which creates a cleaner environment for your aquatic buddies. Look at how much mulm is built up on my current soil layer. Since rainbow fish are startled easily, they can bump into certain objects in their environment. This means they can be prone to bacterial infections, so they generally require clean water to stay healthy and active. Making this change is not without its downsides, however. In general, a black substrate brings out better colors in your fish. This is extremely true when it comes to rainbow fish. Look at the difference in coloration between these two tanks. The water parameters and temperatures are almost identical, and yet the rainbow fish in my 60-gallon tank have deeper colors most of the day, whereas the fish in this tank are a little washed out in comparison. I also think this has something to do with my crappy vinyl background, but more on that later. It's also important to note that if you choose to change your foreground after a tank has been established, you will likely deal with your substrates mixing depending on what type of fish you keep. I have 4 plecos in this tank, so I'm pretty confident I'll be cleaning up aquasoil every water change for quite a while, as these fish tend to dig and displace the soil. I'm okay with that though. A few balls of soil on the sand actually doesn't bother me. Amano shrimp are also notorious for rolling soil around like soccer balls. So to get started, I grabbed a couple 5-gallon buckets, a short length of siphon hose, and some towels. I left the Fluval FX6 canister filter running while I pulled up large clumps of pygmy chainsword. This of course lifted a ton of mulm and detritus into the water column, which will get sucked up by the filter. Since I planned to clean the filter after I was done with the rescape, this didn't worry me at all. Now this is a process that will definitely look worse before it looks better. Your tank is going to get quite cloudy and will require several large water changes after you are done with the rescape. If seeing your tank like this makes you question your decision to change it, just keep thinking about the finished product and how nice it will look when you're done. I promise it will get better. Once I removed the bulk of the carpeting plants, I siphoned some of the mulm off the soil. I have quite a thick layer of soil in this tank, and I need to remove most of it from the front glass before I even think of adding sand to it. This can be accomplished by simply using a hose and siphoning the soil into a 5-gallon bucket. I plan on reusing this soil for future projects, so I'll store it in the basement until I need it again. As you probably know, aquasoil is expensive, so if you can reuse it, then by all means go ahead. You might just have to recharge it with some root tabs after the initial nutrients have been exhausted. For my new sand foreground to be successful, I need to create a barrier with river stones to separate the existing aquasoil from the new sand layer. If I don't do this, soil and sand will mix over time, ruining the aesthetic of what I'm trying to create. I want the classic contrast of a lightly colored sand with dark wood elements and lots of healthy plant growth. I plan to finish off the foreground with some small detail river pebbles, which I believe will make the entire aquascape look a bit more natural and interesting to look at. Once I siphoned out a decent amount of old aquasoil, I started placing the barrier stones in a linear formation, going from left to right and essentially splitting the tank into 2 zones, a back section and a front section. I tried to remove as many high spots of the soil that I could find, so it would minimize the chances of soil being pushed into the foreground. Of course, with my heavy stock list of larger fish, I'm sure I'll be removing aquasoil every water change for a long time. My hope is that over time, I will be able to remove most of the additional loose aquasoil and maintain a sand foreground that is easy to clean. I could spruce up the sand foreground from time to time by adding additional sand and rocks to it, so that it always looks clean and fresh. Now it's time to add the main layer of sand to the foreground. I started by taking a small cup and slowly pouring sand over the existing aquasoil to form a nice base layer to work with. I found that starting on one side and working my way to the other side of the tank was the most efficient way for me to add the sand, but there's no right or wrong way of doing it. If you're curious what kind of sand I'm using, it's called red flint sand. I buy it in large bags from my local fish store. It's relatively cheap, extremely clean, and it features a variety of interesting colors and textures compared to some other uniform varieties of sand I've used. What I like most about this is the sharp contrast it creates with the other dark elements of the aquascape. This process took a decent amount of time. I did my best to add sand everywhere I could to really lock in the old aquasoil. This included pouring it behind and in between the river stones, as well as on top of some of the background plants. I have no problem admitting that I was getting rather bored of my previous aquarium layout. I found myself wanting more details to look at while I enjoyed the tank with my family. If you find yourself doing the same, then changing the foreground could make a massive impact on your tank, which for me definitely reignited the love I had for this 90-gallon aquarium. After all, we keep aquariums in our homes because they're beautiful to look at, and they give us a unique opportunity to bring nature indoors. Now it's time to add some finer details to the sand. I started by taking some slightly smaller river stones and placing them in what I thought looked like a natural orientation around the larger ones. I bought some smaller red flint pebbles from my local aquarium store for this purpose, although you could just as easily use pea gravel from your local hardware store, which is usually only $5 a bag. Using a technique you've probably seen on MD fish tanks, I tried my best to randomly drop pebbles throughout the foreground, adding slightly more to the bases of the larger stones. Now, I'm by no means an aquascaper, but I have to say I was very pleased with how this smaller pebble seemingly tied everything together. The additional color and detail they provided made a huge impact, in my opinion, and is one of the best parts of the foreground. For a few minutes each day, the sun will peek through a nearby window and illuminate the fish. The natural colors of the fish are gorgeous as they dance in the sun. I can't help but stop what I'm doing and enjoy the view. I also decided to add 12 Corydoras trilineatus that my wife and I bred earlier this year. We look forward to watching these cheeky little catfish school around the new foreground in search for a bite to eat. They've also started breeding in this tank, although it's doubtful if any fry will survive with all these large fish swimming around. Before we add the final touches to our rescape, let's feed the fish. I like to feed my fish a mixture of fresh baby brine shrimp, frozen brine shrimp, bloodworms, and Repashy gel foods. On days where I'm busy, they're perfectly happy with a quality flake food. Sometimes I feed a bit too much, but the plants do a good job of filtering out the extra waste. Since this tank ran wild for so long, there were little clumps of Anubias nana and Anubias petite scattered all throughout the tank. The plants would just move with the flow and not always to an ideal location. Using some additional driftwood from another tank, I decided I would secure the epiphyte plants using superglue. This method ensures that your plants will stay where you want them, and the leaves are oriented towards a light source. You can also glue plants to rocks. This will weigh down your Anubias while also making it easy to reposition your plants if you change your mind down the road. I'm not always the best with setting up hardscape, but I made an effort to place these pieces of wood so that they align with the main piece in a somewhat natural fashion. After the plants grow in, I'm hoping this layout will give the illusion that this is all one big piece of driftwood. That's it. Now there's nothing left to do but sit back and enjoy your new aquarium. I'm really eager to watch the plants grow in over time. I think the entire layout will look absolutely seamless when it happens. I also plan on adding a few more detailed plants to the foreground, as well as some taller plants to the back left of the tank. What plants do you suggest? I've also replaced the lily pipes I was using with the standard fluval outflow and inflow set to increase the flow, which has proven to be quite beneficial for the fish and the plants. I plan on injecting a low level of CO2 into this tank to boost plant growth, and I'll pair that with a consistent regimen of liquid fertilizer dosing to get my plants looking good again. I hope you enjoyed this simple tutorial. If you have the desire to make some changes to your current aquarium, then go for it. Even if you make a mistake, you'll learn a valuable lesson and grow as an aquarist in the process. If you can achieve your desired look, then you'll be rewarded every day with a slice of liquid nature in your living room. Is there anything more luxurious than that? I hope you're all doing well. Happy New Year from the Sydney's... I hope you're all doing very well. I hope you're all doing well. Happy New Year's from the Sydney's Angels family. I hope you're all doing well. Happy New Year's and from the... I hope you're all doing well. Happy New Year's from the Sydney's Angels family. Take care, and we'll see you next time.